first time. Again, welcome to Startup Funeral, and my name is Father Leo for the entire evening. We had 4 startups originally to present, and 2 hours before the event, one startup decided that it wasn't dead anymore. The funny thing is, this startup is in the room, and we enjoy them and we appreciate it. But what we learned is that as a startup funeral, there are some lessons that we had to learn ourselves from this. And as opposed to having that startup come and talk up and be kind of awkward, we decided it would be a great chance to tell you what we have learned, what lessons we have learned throughout the last 2 months of planning this awful idea of you guys drinking and eating and burying imaginary things. When we started this, we thought there were 3 major components. First, we needed sponsors. Then we needed people, which is yourself. And lastly, we needed speakers. And from hardest to easiest, we thought sponsors are going to be impossible to get. People, well, you guys are going to come for beer anyway, right? And food. I mean, am I wrong? And lastly, the easiest, we'll have tons of people who want to come and speak about their startups and things that happen. Maybe some of them throw pies at each other on stage. And what happened was, in reality, sponsors were eager to help us out. And again, we thank our 4 sponsors, Pop Chips,
Application Developers Alliance. Very much thank you.
Right.
And
Pi-hole. And New York City, of course. Again, you guys came regardless of what happened because we were like, hey, free beer, it's free. It's Friday night, you guys had a long day at work, so why would you come? But we found it almost impossible to get all the speakers to come. And one of the reasons is because there are conflicts of interest. Sometimes your startup really isn't dead. Or most importantly, you don't know what's going on next. You're afraid to talk in front of a group of people about what happened and what went wrong. So when we do this again, which we will in a few months, or several, we kind of know the lessons that we have learned to bring more dead startups to come and talk to you about not only the lessons they learned, but if they want to show their company cat or dog, they can go in and do that. And if you want to apply for the next round, go to startupfuneral.co, click apply, it's there. Lastly, each startup will be getting, which is we think is really cool. I'm not sure anyone can see this. A small little urn. Marks the life and death of their startup, and this is Favorly's, and I'm holding on to it. And they're usually just a remembrance of all the lessons that we have learned throughout holding this event. So if you want a little urn, have a startup and fail. It's awesome. And most importantly, we hope that you enjoy the rest of the event, and you actually have not learned anything. Appreciate that the fact that these people are brave enough to come and talk about their startups. So first up, we have Brian Papa, who will be presenting his app that we are presenting. It is
what's that? You're right.
Yeah, I'm right. Add you. Yes, thank you. That's the one I don't remember. So Brian, please come up.
Thank you, Father Leo. Father Kevin.
You're welcome.
All right, so my name is Brian Papa, and I am here tonight to pay my respects to an iPhone app that I worked on as a co-founder and iOS developer called Adu. So let's start with the birth of Adu. It came into this world on March 11th, 2011 at a healthy 1.88 megabytes. And it was an iPhone app. So just to kind of run down quickly the features, it was a quick and easy way to connect with people that you meet on Facebook, Twitter, and Foursquare all in one shot. You could also leverage the data coming from those social networks. So for example, we would take your Foursquare check-in and annotate that meeting so that when you went to look back on it later, you would remember where you met somebody. The other thing that was kind of cool was that if there was no internet connection, what we would do, say you're at a party, you're underground or something like that. I don't know. People go to weird parties nowadays. You could connect over Bluetooth and the data would go back and forth, and then you could actually complete the connection using the APIs when you're back online. So here's just a quick little demo of how it worked in slideshow format. And I believe the key, oh, here we go. Okay, so first, like this guy here, you would set up all of your different profiles. You log in, you do that to sort of configure the app. Then you meet somebody. They have the app as well. You both tap the screen to connect. So it's, it's kind of like Bump, but we were more focused on social networks and tapping. And then, oh man, sorry about this. The slides are not progressing. Okay, there we go. Then you would connect with somebody, and I connected with Damien here. You can see the Foursquare check-in. We're annotating it with where we met, and you also have the option to add somebody to a Twitter list, if you remember what those were. You had that as an option. So, okay, so this is the demo, and we started out trying to connect. Okay, there we go. So we presented at the New York Tech Meetup, and we did not have Keynote over Wi-Fi there, so things worked a little better, sorry. And that was pretty cool. Okay, so then we also presented at the Stanford Tech Meetup. The Stanford, oh wait, that's not right, I'm sorry. It was the Stamford, Connecticut Tech Meetup, my bad. Yeah. Then we went to South by Southwest Interactive, because it was March when we launched, so we went there with a bunch of t-shirts and pins. And this happened, this was pretty cool. We were actually voted by this app called Opinionated as the third best app at South by. We beat Hashable, GroupMe, Gowalla, I don't know where they got their data from, but things look pretty good. Things look pretty good. I mean, we got killed by Instagram and food spotting, but yeah, I don't know what happened here. So things are looking pretty good. But oh, geez, sorry. Okay, right after South by, this happened. Downloads went off a cliff. So why did that happen? Well, when we were building Ado, we had this kind of idea of creating a minimum viable product, which is sort of an idea that came to be in the 2000s with web apps, where you would create an app, you'd put it out there, you'd get user feedback, you'd iterate, and then you'd have an app out. The thing was, though, it wouldn't be very polished. It would just be kind of okay. And I think the problem was that when we launched, that really wasn't a thing you could do anymore. iOS, the App Store is crazy. You got stuff like Path and Clear here, which have these crazy UIs. You have something like Tweety from back in the day, Instagram, where they're super high-performant apps. And then you have crazy stuff like GarageBand, which is like, you don't even realize that, you can't even fathom that this is on a phone. It's crazy. So really, the bar is really high nowadays on the App Store. And I think big companies like Google and Facebook, they recognize this. So that's why they've bought out companies like Sofa and Sparrow, not for their apps, but just because they recognize that they really need to make great apps, so they've purchased great app companies to make that happen. So you really need to put the time in to create a great app if you want to be in the same market as these kind of companies. But how does that jive with what this guy said, right? Steve Jobs, he used to say at Apple, real artists ship. And if you're spending all your time trying to make sure everything's perfect, how's that going to work? You're never going to ship. So, if we go back to this graph, maybe instead of getting to 75% of where we wanted to be and doing a few things good, what if instead maybe we had just done one less thing and done those great? So, we would have compromised by doing less things, but we would have done them better. So that's one theory as to why Adu died. Another one was that there was a lot of friction with this app. It was really awkward to use in real-life social situations. So this was how it worked. You'd meet somebody, you'd ask them, do you have Adu? They would say, maybe if they said yes, they'd open the app, but they probably said no. And then they would have to download it from the App Store. And it was a tough word to spell. I don't know if you can see that. This is not even a real word. It's a French word that we added a letter to. So, yeah. Then, once you both got the app, you've both got it configured, you try to connect over the internet. But, because it's a proximity-based app, so what would happen is the two of you would initiate a request to our back end, and then it would realize the two people were trying to connect, it would send the data to both phones, and then the connection would happen. But, realistically, like I said, in a lot of meetups and stuff like that, you don't have a good internet connection. So instead, a lot of times we were seeing that people had to fall back on the Bluetooth technology to try to connect. And the thing was that on the iPhone 4, Bluetooth was really bad. It took a really long time to establish a connection, and in the best case it would maybe be 10 seconds or something like that, but I think it was really like a case of, maybe the technology wasn't really there, and that's why the app didn't succeed. And it kind of reminds me of Dodgeball, because, Dodgeball, that came out in the early 2000s, I think, and then it sort of was reborn years later as Foursquare. And Dodgeball may have been ahead of its time because, at that time, nobody had a smartphone, maybe a businessman did. Typing on your feature phone was very hard. It all worked over SMS, and in 2004, I don't think a lot of people were using SMS, and this idea of sort of sharing your location was a very radical idea. Nobody was on Twitter, very few people were on Facebook, so, giving up this personal information wasn't the right climate for that. So, maybe Adu was ahead of its time, I don't know. But, on further thought, I think we should have realized that there was a problem back here at the New York Tech Meetup. Because during the audience Q&A session, Nate Westheimer, who's the MC of the New York Tech Meetup, he had a question. And he asked me about another app. Not Adu, a different app that I had worked on. And that was cool because Adu kind of had a tepid reaction from the crowd, kind of like I'm getting right now. And when Nate asked this question, the place just went crazy. So, good on him. He's got to put on a good show, and it worked. And I think really what we should have realized here was that, we were trying to solve a problem that nobody really had. Nobody really wants to meet people and connect on multiple social networks in one shot. So, at that point, there's really nothing else that we could do besides kind of take Adu out back, put it out of its misery, and remove it from sale. So I'm the developer that removed it from sale, and knowing what I know now, I would do it again. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Brian Papa, with you. How are we doing? We're doing okay so far? Yeah. All right, great, because we have two more sad stories, but great stories. So next up, we have a wonderful app, a wonderful service, forgive me, Get a Game. We'll be talking about their, I guess, day after morning, and it'll be presented by Dan Tashman. So Dan, if you will come up.
Yes, hi. I'm Dan Tashman. I was former CEO of Get a Game. What was Get a Game? I'll just cue to trigger the next slide, please. Get a Game was a mobile sport and activity finder. It was a cross-platform, location-based, geo-social mobile network, but really what I wanted it to be, thank you very much. It was access to activity. It was supposed to be this mobile app that would allow you to find people playing pickup games around you, and you could connect, and you could exercise, and you could meet new people, and it would be this wonderful thing. Next slide, please. This was the space that we were trying to get ourselves into. It was this convergence of the gyms, the leagues, the pay-to-play, and the self-help. And what I was thinking was that there were a lot of different services out there that the gyms, and they had their agenda, but there was, in the city especially, trying to find a pay-to-play option, a consistent pickup game. I grew up on the Upper West Side, and I was always trying to find games to play, and I figured there has to be a better way. There has to be something, and then finally I figured there should be an app for that. So I'm going to get a game to fit in this service, and the next, yeah, that's okay, please, to the next slide. So instead of trying to just start my own path or Facebook or social network, I tried to do a couple things different that weren't out there. One was to try and be an aggregator of sport and fitness events. We had this nice system where we could pull in other APIs from Meetup, Active, and Facebook, so we could pull in, filter, and curate free or pay-to-play activities all around us from other social networks. It didn't really matter where it was native to us. What mattered was that when you looked on it, you should have something near you to find. It was a location-based service, so we figured we could target the consumer with the right message at the right place at the right time. And cross-platform. This was the thing that I really think we put a lot of our eggs into this basket, that it would be good to not just be iOS, not just to start on a single platform and develop a community, but to be as broad and universal as possible. So we put a lot of effort into being completely cross-platform. And we wanted to be a one-stop shop for both users and providers, so not just the people who are playing, but also for the gyms, trainers, studios. Anyone who has their own sole proprietor as a fitness trainer could use this to connect with other people. Next, please. Right, so how did I do this? 75K rounds from friends and family, which if you have never raised a friends and family round before, it is a humbling experience to ask everyone you know for money, and you know it builds character, but you really do find out who believes in you, and it's really validating at the end to find people who will, who are willing to take a flyer on your success and on you. So I hired an iOS dev shop, which was awful, just a miserable experience. It was 8 months of brutal non-communication, and I was really disheartened at the end. Eventually, though, managed to recruit a part-time CTO who I gave a 10% plus a couple grand just for his time, who liked the project, and he was really good, and I finally found an India dev shop who I could help manage at a reasonable rate, so I could do the front end. I had a CTO who could help manage the back end, and I had a couple of really good grunts over in India who could help execute it and bang it out. We had a really nice working relationship. Recruited a sales at 4% plus a commission of however many sports clubs, trainers, etc. got in. A social media intern, as cheap as I could find it. We got a wonderful acceptance to a Microsoft Mobile Accelerator, which allowed us to put out our Windows mobile app at no cost, basically. And it was a great experience. I just wish more people used Windows Mobile. The Intel, we also got an Intel AppUp scholarship, which at the time they were giving out because Intel AppUp has its own store, and they were basically doing, they're paying developers to help populate their store. So we applied for that, got accepted, which allowed us to build this HTML5 based app that we could release on Android and on the web. So all of a sudden now we have this this 4-platform app, 3 different code bases. Not a lot of people really using it. Next slide, please. So yeah, in the end, 1, ran out of funds. That was it, and that's why I stopped. 2 is that we're serving different masters, and that was kind of the conflict that we had. Is that I was trying to build this portal for users, for people who wanted to find games, but in the end it didn't really serve the people who were going to be monetizing the business, which is the sports service providers, the gyms, the trainers. They had their own calendaring systems, they had their own way to go, and if I really had wanted to monetize from it, in retrospect I should have built it more to provide for the sports service providers and then try to please the users as well. Not enough traction. I don't know why they're all numbered one, by the way. And that's also the core user. And also that it wasn't built to make money. I mean, in the retrospect, I think I built this because I thought it was a good idea and because I wanted to do it, and not because it was a vehicle that could monetize, that the ROI was there. It was because I felt that there was a need, not so much that it would make money. And you know, can you go to the next slide, please? So, and that in the end was part of these takeaways. So yeah, takeaways that I got from Get a Game was, one, maybe it's a good idea, yes. Good business model, maybe not. I mean, that's something you kind of have to find out for yourself. Number one again, you can't do it all yourself. Next time if I had to do it again, I think I would try it with a team. I think being a single co-founder and trying to outsource or find freelance or trying to just plug holes where you can is very difficult, especially with an ambitious project. So if I had to do it over again, I think I would try to start with that kind of a framework. The world may be flat, but find a place to be anyway. So when I was first developing Get a Game, I had me in New York, I had my biz dev guy in San Francisco, my main CTO in Ann Arbor, and a couple of developers in India. And we made it work. We banged out the product, and within 6 months, we actually made it work. However, not the best way to operate. It's terrible hours. You're up at all hours of the day. We have 3 a.m. conference calls trying to get everybody on the phone. Having a space like this, or some sort of co-work environment where you can have a nexus, you can have a place to really not just discuss the primary things, but the secondary things, and not have it be just an issue for time. I think that's something that we would have benefited from a lot. Go to market with social media strategy and goals. I think for this, what we did was we had an idea of what we wanted to do, but we didn't really have it fleshed out. I thought we'd get some feedback and we'd be able to react to the people who are, to our users. But in retrospect, we really should have had a more tangible, not only strategy of the story that we wanted to tell, the content we wanted to provide, the channels we wanted to focus on, but also the goals, not how many users do we want to have after 3 weeks, after a month, after 6 months. Those are the things that I didn't set out for all of us at first, and I think in retrospect it would have been better, or at least we would have been able to benchmark our progress and have a clear idea of where we were going. And then the last one, second to last one, is focus on product, not perception. We got caught up, I think, in trying to please make it investable, make it something that was built to look good for the VCs, for the angels, for the accelerators, and we were properly vetted. I mean, we went to ERA, Beta Spring, Blueprint Health, Ultralight Startup, Hatchery, pitched it all, got good feedback, and and at the end of the day, if the investors don't like it, if the accelerators don't like it, and if the users aren't catching on to it, something's wrong. And then this last point was something I really liked. It was a conflict for me the whole time, was passion versus pivot, because they always tell you should really go after do what you're passionate about. If you don't like it, what are you doing it for? But then they expect you to have this flexibility where, well, if it doesn't catch, you should pivot quickly, and you should change it, and you should, just see whatever the market tells you should do. And that's something I had a lot of trouble with, because at the end of the day, what I did was I wanted to make Get a Game a place. I had a specific goal in mind. It was to be to give people access to activity, and with that goal in mind, anything else was really not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I struggled a long time about whether I should make this private label, whether I should try to apply it to another category. But at the end, I think let Get a Game die, because it may be a good idea, but it may not be a good business. That being said, you should definitely keep this in mind, passion versus pivot, follow, but do whatever it is you want to do, because I'm really happy I did Get a Game, and I think everybody out here should do what it is that they want to do too.
Thank you so much, Dan. Again, a round of applause for Get a Game. Before we get to our next presenter, there's 2 things I forgot to mention or did not mention. First, there are 2 things that you can interact with in this space. First, if you want to leave a message for the deceased or anyone, we have a sign-in book, as any funeral would. Feel free to put your message or whatever you want to. It's on the right-hand corner between the beer. And in the back, there's a little space where you can draw on it if you want. You'll see a couple gravestones with some of our perceptions of what may be dead next. The next presenter and the next startup is a... let me ask this question. How many people in this room are 30? Raise your hand. Or over 30 and above, raise your hand. I know I just called a bunch of people. Okay, so for you guys, this may be something that holds dear to you, particularly if you were in New York a while ago. If you know the word Cosmo.com, you may remember it from the 2001 days, not that far away from the GeoCity days. We're lucky to have Chris Argusa from their former CTO to come and talk, and we're gracious to have him. So again, Cosmo.com, which we now officially buried today. And Chris presenting. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I didn't bring audio-visual tools or anything. I just treating this more like a eulogy to say goodbye to an old friend who's been gone for some time now. I'm coming today to discuss the life and the death of an old friend of mine, Cosmo.com. Those of you who are too young to remember, or if you were living in a rock in the 90s, Cosmo was an idea that was both simple and ridiculous. It wanted to bring the internet to your door in under an hour. So you basically can get whatever you wanted delivered right away. So you didn't have to make that trade-off between the convenience of ordering online and waiting 3 days for the post office. It was great, it was amazing, and it was incredibly ridiculous to try to be able to do this. And like most of the .com great ideas, it failed miserably in the spring of 2001. But we're here to celebrate it anyway, 10 years later. I got involved in Cosmo in the very early days, back in, before they had a space, before they had money, before they had software, hell, before they really had a good idea. The founder came up to me with a business plan that was incredibly long and detailed and full of all these amazing charts and graphs that were detailing how he was going to be the next Blockbuster. And he was going to take over the video rental space. Why anyone would want to be the video rental space is a different question. But he came up to me, and so Joe, I looked over these graphs, I looked through these charts, I read through this, I think it was an 80-page business plan, and I said, this is a terrible idea. Why would you want to do this? Who the hell would want to get these things delivered in an hour? Why would you care? And frankly, how are you going to make money doing this, ever? And he didn't have any good answers. So I agreed to help him, but I kept my day job and just helped him a little on the side. But little I know, I was infected with the startup virus that I'm sure a lot of people around here have. Where you go home and suddenly you find yourself thinking about this and the potential this thing's going to have down the road, and if they just make this and they add this thing, then this thing's going to be the next big thing, and don't you worry, this is going to be great. And before I knew it, I joined full-time on the deferred salary plan, of course, because there was no money. And I was working in a basement on 12th Street. Wish I had brought, oh, they have pictures, wow. Woo! Oh, wow, that brings back some bad memories. So this basement, you gotta understand, it was the classic horrible startup basement. 4 of the 6 people working there lived in the basement, which made for some great early morning meetings. It's, you know, you come on down, but can you please step over the CEO, please? He's still sleeping. And then there's the dog. Of course, there has to be a dog in every startup. And we had this great, very loud dog named Laney, and I wanted to bring a picture, and I couldn't find it, so I apologize on that. And just don't get me started on the rats that would scare the hell out of me in the late night coding sessions that we had down there when they were running up and down the walls. But throughout all that, the concept took off. Business took off, everything was amazing, and luckily just then the .com boom kicked in, and suddenly it was all this free money. All you have to do is ask and you get whatever you want, apparently, from what I can see. And so that started what I used to call the crazy days. In the space of about a year and a half, we went from those 6 people working in the basement to 300 people working in 5 floors downtown. We went from 1 warehouse in Lower Manhattan to 25 warehouses in 11 cities around the country. We went from just the videotapes to DVDs, books, movies, magazines, and like prepared burritos, I believe. Basically, tried to get everything you could. And at the end of the day, I think we raised somewhere close to about $280 million. There's only one problem with all that. We're losing money on every order. But hey, what's that? It's not a problem. At this time, it was what we also did is when we brought it, we decided they were told we had to hire the adults. So we brought in all the adults, these senior executives from FedEx and Coca-Cola and Ethan Allen for some reason. And there's just an entire room full of gray hairs that would come in and they would take the company to the next level and really drive it forward. And gone were the days of the deferred salary plans. Now there was money flowing out of the ears for expansion. We were doing things like, well, the tech group, our one big issue, as Rob can probably point out, was our tournament quality foosball table, which of course led to tournaments of foosball continuously throughout the day. But you know, the operations, I think, would get Cosmo tchotchkes with everything they could possibly print it on, from hats to gloves to jackets to shot glasses. And I think a lot of them are still on eBay if you want to get any of them. And of course, marketing took the cake in spending, though, as marketing always does. And they put the Cosmo name everywhere, billboards, trucks, and innumerable TV commercials that were just on all the time. My favorite was the one that suggested that we delivered so fast by shooting men out of cannons. So it's a great commercial, you gotta find it someday. But unfortunately we still were losing money on every order. But we was in the e-board meetings with our investors, and the message was very, very clear. We don't care. We want you to raise the top line, lose as much money as you have to, we'll be there with the cash. And we went forward, we trusted them, and everything was great. So there we were in March of 2000. Our IPO was planned for May, so we're about a month and a half away. And we're having an Oscars party, I think was the excuse. And liquor was flowing much more than today, so you guys have got nothing going on with that. And there was our CEO standing on a grand piano, giving this crazy speech about all the stuff that we're going to do in the future, and everyone left the party just counting the value of all their shares in their head. The market crashed 2 weeks later. Yeah, and suddenly all those money guys who said, oh, we'll be there with all the cash, they suddenly found out that profits do matter. And you shouldn't really trust them because, you know what, they suddenly disappeared. Our CMO, our CTO, and our CEO were all fired. And our CFO, the guy from Ethan Allen, took over. Before you get too gloomy about things, just remember one thing. Cosmo at this point had a bunch of great things going for it. It had a rabid customer base. It had 25 operations in 25 locations in 11 cities. Had customers who loved it and had employees who would die for it. And it had $75 million in the bank still. So it wasn't really a charity case yet. Had a great chance to succeed. But there was still that pesky problem of we weren't making money on any order. You would think we'd address that, but unfortunately the gray hairs in the room over the next 6 months decided that the key thing we need to do was to cut the corporate costs. So they never looked at the core problem. And over the 6 months we decided we needed to slash corporate costs, and I think we were going to start a catalog that people were going to order over the phone, gifts over the phone, because apparently that's really the direction for the .com at that point. And so this became the direction that we went through for the next few months. And there was a round of, we had to cut 20% of the staff. And then we had to close two markets. And then we cut another 20% of the staff the next month. And then we closed another market. And then every month going forward, we cut another set of staff 5 more times over the course of the year. I left at the end of the year because I just couldn't take the flailing anymore. There was no plan, no desire to go forward and do anything. Cosmo shut its doors for good in May of 2001 and has not been seen since. There's a small silver lining before I depress everybody here. We did restart something similar to Cosmo, and hopefully you guys will check it out one day. Max Delivery is my current company. Basically, it's a very similar thing, except for that we decided to focus on actually making money on every order. I know it's a strange concept. Working on that, and then see if we can build from there. And so we've been in business 7 years, still growing and having a great time. If you ever want to check it out, there's one on our site, I guess. Delivers in Lower Manhattan and expanding to the rest of Manhattan if I can ever find frickin' real estate. Sorry. So I guess that's it for the story of Cosmo. It's a very sad and tragic ending to what could have been a great company. So if we can raise your glasses for toast to the most ridiculous company ever to try to do something, Cosmo.com.
Thank you again for Cosmo, and one final raise of the glasses to all the stars who are presented here for this evening. We wish them well, and we hope your future endeavors are not as bad as your first ones. Now on to Father Kevin.
Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I had a couple things I wanted to say quick. Just so you know, inside of the urns that we gave away is hard candy. I believe it's Jolly Ranchers. And the idea was, sorry your company died, have some hard candy. Trying not to be overly morbid about giving away urns. Somebody suggested ash or sugar or whatever, just forget it. So I want to say thank you to everyone that came out, certainly all the speakers. I really enjoyed everything they had to say. I hope you enjoyed your time here. I think we're going to have a quick little play out with Andy on the way out, and then there's DJ, more booze, and you should drink and enjoy yourself. And again, I remind you, if you had a startup and you want to do this next time, go to the website, startup.co.com, fill it out. All right, thank you.